From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 10th. Today's video, we're going to actually cover a couple of things. One, we have a short-term threat that we have maps out for on the Weather Alerts page, so I'm going to provide a little context to that, and then we'll go into the longer range, and hopefully you're paying attention for that part, because I'm noticing that some people are not to these Weather Weeklies videos in the same theme that I've been giving for about a little over a month now since we started these Weather Weeklies back up in early November. So we're going to get into all of that today and cover up, try to clear up any confusion with the longer range stuff. Here is what the outlook looked like on Friday, and this is the long range outlook from our website. And this isn't fundamentally much different from what we had prior. It's just, I don't think people understand how these ranges work. So, we have a slightly above average period coming in here right before Christmas, and people are starting to see that on the ensembles, and they're starting to freak out. And then we have near average for this last week of December. Could that be extended a little bit longer with a slightly above average? Yeah, it's possible, but I mean, it's still, the overall idea here is still going to work out exactly the way we figured, and it's just going to take some time and require some patience to get there if you're a snow lover. Okay, it is going to flip, okay? I'm not worried about that. Now, when you see something like this, it says near average, and it says between the 24th and 30th, that doesn't mean the entire time is going to be above average. That means that entire week of time, that span, is going to average at the end of the day, or end of the week, it's going to average out to average. You could have the first 3 days of that being slightly above. The fourth day of the week, maybe it's near average, and the last three slightly above average, and they all average out to near average. That's what that is, okay? It doesn't mean every single day within there is going to be near average, and there's actually some indications that on Christmas Day, or maybe the day or two after that, you still might have slightly above average temperatures in there. So, this is a kind of a transition week, that last week of December. I'm not really buying just yet that it hangs into early the first week of January. I think we do transition at some point in that 2-week period between Christmas and the week after January, but that transition could come sooner or could come on later in that period. That's just something that's uncertain, but we do know it's going to change. It's just a matter of when, okay? So it's going to be somewhere within that region, but we are going to go slightly below average temperatures after that point once we head into January, and that's why we still have the entire month as a whole is slightly below average with near to slightly above average snowfall. This year, this December, this month, we have slightly below average snowfall, but some areas, in our far northern areas are to get some here in the near term. It's uncertain what you're going to get over the next couple of weeks, and that's because anything you have in December is going to be more of a thread the needle opportunity. What we're having coming in here today, or actually, overnight tonight into Monday morning, is a thread the needle opportunity or thread the needle scenario. Here's what we have for average snowfall in December. It's not a whole lot, but it's certainly out higher than it was in November, and then it gets even higher once they get into January. These are our major climate sites on the left side. I had some of you ask me last week, well, what about Stroudsburg? What about Hacken? Whatever. They had different questions of what about these different places. You're just going to have to find you're going to have to find the area that's closest to you and go off of that average. That's going to be pretty close. It might be slightly different, but they don't keep climate records for anywhere other than these regions within our coverage region. Okay, so I don't have formidable data of snowfall that's kept on a climate basis for anything other than that. So here is what we have year-to-date snowfall. Everybody's on the board. That's because we had a couple snow shower events. We had one on the 28th of November. We had a couple back-to-back last week for the mid to late week period, or actually middle of the week, right? But we had a couple snow shower periods that gave us some snow, at least trace amounts. And I will tell you, again, this is measured at the airports. So in between areas would have had some minor accumulations here. Scranton-Wilkes-Barre is actually the WNEP station. So that's where they measure that up in Moosic, Pennsylvania. That is where that official measurement comes from, not the airport. But the rest of these are all airports. where they measure this, and the airport itself might only have measured a trace, but there's areas around that that had a little bit more or less depending on where you're at. So I know some places in, like, say, Lancaster, they got over an inch already. So you're over, even though Harrisburg is only at a trace, and that's the closest climate station to you, there's places in Lancaster that definitely got over an inch, okay? I've seen it. I've seen the pictures. I've seen the measurements. And, areas around the Lehigh Valley as well some places had up to a half inch. But, it's not at the airport, so it doesn't count. For the climate records. It counts, but it doesn't count for the climate records. So we'll continue to follow this year-to-date stuff. This is where we should be to this day. Okay, this is where you should be. Year-to-date total accumulation. So we are behind, even in Wilkes-Barre, where it's 1.6 and higher than the rest of the region. You should be at 5.7 to this point on December 10th. So going forward, we're going to look at this system coming in today. And this is going to do a simulated radar loop of the high-resolution rapid refresh, because at the time I recorded this Weather Weeklies video, the new NAM's not in. But they're essentially doing the same thing. Now, everybody's getting excited about this because of the change to snow. You're going to have some heavier rain coming in this evening and part of the overnight, as you can see here. Then you get this change to snow on the back end. I don't think this is incorrect with what it's showing. I really don't. The NAM's doing pretty much the same thing with this looking aggressive with this changeover. And when it gets to that point again, when I'm going to stop it, stop this loop here. I mean, that's a pretty aggressive look of the loop. It's getting all the way down to almost I-95. Okay, and if you look at our snow map that we have for this event, which is, I'll get into that in a second. We'll go back to that. It takes some flakes at least down I-95. It just doesn't really, the possibility of a few flakes that don't accumulate. Now, even though it's showing these dark blues and heavy snow amounts, it's probably not going to accumulate in the same way you would think, because there's a difference between, I say this every year, there's a difference between snow falling and snow sticking. You have to remember prior, there was going to be a lot of heavy rain, so the ground's going to be wet. Snow is going to fall into that, and it's going to, absorb with the puddles that are already there on the ground, or the wetness on the ground. Second, temperatures are going to be in the mid-30s, so it's going to have to take heavier rates to bring, come down fast enough where it has to work and accumulate. When you get up here in northeast PA, the higher elevations especially, the temperatures will be colder, so it'll be easier to stick, and that's why you have more snow up in those areas. As you can see, I have no problem with this high-resolution rapid refresh image at all with snowfall, because it's pretty much matches what we have, okay? It's focusing on areas of elevation. See all these gaps in here? All these gaps? Those are lower elevation areas. In between. Those are low elevation in between. Valleys, whatever. So the higher elevations is where you're going to have the higher amounts. And that's why our map is indicating that as well. Let me get the rain map first. This is our total rainfall for this event. We have a large area of between 1.75 and 2.25. National Weather Service is actually more aggressive than that with 2 to 3 inch amounts. I think we came down a little bit slightly, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody doesn't quite make 1.75. It might be 1.5 instead. But, it's a lot of rain no matter how you look at it. But not everywhere in this area is going to do it, but this is the highest probability area. That's why it's coded that way, and I don't really micromanage rain so much as I do snow. And this is a micromanaged map. This is our snowfall map for this particular event. And expecting all rain southeast of I-95, but just northwest of there. You could have some flakes at the tail end. This is pretty much following what the HRR is doing, even though it's not sticking because it's too warm at the surface and or wet prior. Coating to inch in B area, this is coating to 2 inches in C, but again, favoring the higher elevations. Only the 2 inch areas are like very small amounts. So there's one here, one here. So they're spotty within that. Most of you in the lower elevations are showing just a coating, closer to the coating side rather than the 2 inches. So just understand that that's how that's going to work in this particular event, okay? So that's what we're looking at. And our snow map try to convey that message. The highest is going to be up here. I will tell you, I don't see any reason to fundamentally change either one. Okay, so if you got a text alert yesterday, timing's the same. Obviously, it's starting right now. We're getting that. And you can see a radar below me here in the video. It's coming. Central PA is already getting it. Okay, that's the rain, the front edge of the rain. I don't see any reason to change this. I see zero reason to change this. So if you got a text alert yesterday, if you're a My Pocket Meteorologist subscriber, this is gonna stand as called, okay? This is what we're going with. No change. So that's today's system. I did want to touch on that first, and now I want to get into the longer range stuff because this is important. A lot of people again are going nuts this week, and they don't really need to. Starting off with the ENSO, which is our El Nino state, we could see the more of a balancing act here over the past week or so with the plus or minuses, the change from last week. But look at these temperatures; are all within 0.4 of each other. Okay, all within 0.4. And I will tell you, Nino 1 and 2 is actually lower than this now. It dropped in this past week. So we're getting closer to a basin-wide event. We're still technically not quite there, but we're awfully close. We're getting close to the basin-wide event where this entire area is pretty much the same sea surface temperature. We're getting close to that. Not quite yet, but here's the sea surface temperature anomalies of those regions that they're talking about, which are right in here. And this is the actual regions. I'm not trying to draw anything funny there. This is getting close to a very basin-wide event across the equatorial Eastern Pacific, which is what we are concerned about. You'll notice, though, the difference between these temperatures and these temperatures above it are not that great. As a matter of fact, there's really no contrast between one or the other, and that's why El Nino hasn't been behaving like an El Nino up until this point, but it will be starting to behave like an El Nino very soon, okay? And I'll show you that here in the video. Here is the 15-day change. This is the change over the past 15 days for the last week of November, first week of December. It has gotten cooler in this basin relative to what it was, but it's still obviously warmer than average and still an El Nino. Now, this is the part that frustrates me, because now I was a lot more frustrated a couple of days ago, but I kind of cooled off a little bit. I'm seeing people post things on Twitter mostly about this, and Facebook, of course, joins in later. We get people talking about a blowtorch Christmas, blowtorch pattern coming up, and we're kicking the can down the road. No, we're not kicking the can down the road. In what world, if you watch these videos, I still have my glasses in my head, I just realized that. Probably could use them. Getting older. So in what world do we not understand that December was not going to be a lucrative month? In what world did I not tell you to exercise patience for the month of December? Okay. In what world was this not shown to everyone over the last couple of weeks? This was for the last 3 weeks. I've shown these. This is the fourth week now, where I've shown what the December El Nino looks like, and we're going to start behaving more like an El Nino very shortly. And a couple things here. This is they were seeing this big Gulf of Alaska, or not Gulf of the Bering low here, the big deep trough here near Alaska, and that does shut off any cold source of the United States and just floods the air with mild air with a fast Pacific jet extension. That's exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so there's no blocking over the Greenland right now, and there isn't expected to be. The only coolerish spot is basically down here. This is averaging all the east-based, moderate to strong east-based El Nino since 1876. Altogether, this is what you get in a prototypical El Nino, okay? So this is what it normally does. Guess what? People are seeing this week and are freaking out. Well, guess what? That's exactly what it's supposed to do. That's exactly the same thing. So what's the problem here? What's the problem? That's exactly what it's supposed to do. This is going out to the evening, and this is the solstice right here, winter solstice. A little cooler southwest. You get the big Gulf of Alaska and Aleutians low, right? Not the Gulf of Alaska, Aleutians, right? And you get all this warmth up in here, flooded in by a fast Pacific jet. Okay, that's what it's supposed to do in December in an El Nino. So this is the stuff I deal with. And at some point, somebody convinced them that December was going to be snowy, so they're, I digress. Also, in addition to this pattern taking shape here, and this is just before Christmas, of course, this is what the pattern looks like, okay? And this is where the warmest, people see this and they freak out too. They say that this red doesn't mean it's a blowtorch. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means the warmest anomalies relative to average are going to be highest above that line, okay? Here in our area, temperatures are about +3 Fahrenheit. So is that a blowtorch? No, it's not a blowtorch. It's slightly warmer than average, not by a couple degrees for a couple days. It's not a torch, though. We're not having 60s and 70s on Christmas, for crying out loud. All right? So people see these maps and they're like, oh my God, I see reds and they think warm and hot. I will tell you, even where it's white hot up here, apparently, over parts of Canada, temperatures are below freezing, and it's snowing up there. This is just an anomaly compared to what is normal at that time of year for that particular area. That's all this is. That's all this is. Departure from average. If we take a closer examination of this and look at the temperature periods for our centermost point, which is Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport, I promise you I didn't put this up here just because I live in the Lehigh Valley. It's because it is the centermost point of our region. Because we go all the way to Williamsport, Wilkes-Barre, all of Jersey, all of Delaware, all the way out to Harrisburg, State College, Lancaster. We cover all the whole area, Northern Maryland. But this is the centermost point of our region. These are the actual projected temperatures of the European ensemble over the next 2 weeks. Well, you get to Christmas, Christmas Eve and Christmas, that's mid-40s. Normal that time, that's 41. So it's like +3, +4. Is that a blowtorch? No. But, I mean, it's not obviously too warm to snow right here. But you still have some, in these overall warmer patterns, you still have these little cold shots here. Now, where you're going to be accompanied by snow in there, we don't know yet. Okay, we'll see. There's a possibility, but you could have something sneak in there. But it would be more thread the needle if that were to occur. It's not going to be something that's the pattern's great and we're going to have snow and cold and all that stuff. You see this up and down pattern here, right? And even the below average isn't really crazy below. It's only by a couple degrees, but it's only at certain times. But you still have this pattern here where it's generally milder than average, at least slightly, going to this point. So it's not a blowtorch, but again, it's not really the best pattern for snow, and that is admittedly so. And a lot of that flooding of warm air across the country that looks like this prior to Christmas. I mean, the entire country is warmer than average, and especially Canada. The reason for that is we have a developing Pacific jet extension in addition to that low in the Aleutians, okay? The combination of these two, and this is a very raucous jet. I mean, this jet here is really screaming across the Pacific. Really screaming across the Pacific. This is a classic El Nino trait. This is a classic December El Nino trait, especially with the fast Pacific jet coming across from Asia. That is not uncommon, and neither is this. This is normal in the month of December. Again, this is following the prototypical, the paradigm of an El Nino in December, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so that is exactly what should be expected. Now, once we get out with time, and I showed you this before, going back to this here, I'm going to go to January now. Look what January does. We go from this to this. Well, now that's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. You get cold cutting underneath in the southern United States and into our area, and the cold or the warmer anomalies is pushed further north and northwest. Okay, you still have this big Gulf. Now it's getting the Aleutians and Gulf of Alaska in January. So the positioning of it changed a little bit. The screaming jet has to slow down, and it takes a while to do that sometimes, but it looks like it's going to happen either very late this month or the first week of January. It'll go away as this thing retracts further south, and we'll be in a better pattern. This is January El Ninos, okay? Well, let's go into January here on the guidance. Look what happens. This all retreats up to here, and we get some cold cutting underneath here as we go into January. This goes from late December, which is warmer, and then goes into January through mid-January, and the heights lower here underneath. And that's not, this pattern right here is not much different. Look, you still have the low here, right, in the Aleutians. You still don't have blocking, right? That'll come in February, we think, or at least maybe later in January. But you have the cold now cutting underneath because you don't have that fast Pacific jet that we're talking about, and that is no different from what is expected in January. Right there. That looks the same. Looks the same. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. This is exactly what's expected. Now, once we get into February, for visual sake, this is an epic pattern. This is an epic pattern. You have blocking here involved. You still have an Aleutian low, but it's more flatter, spread out, strung out, that kind of thing. But you get a deep, active pattern here, cold in February. I think February still is going to be our best month. So you're going to have to be patient. You really are. There's no other way to really to say that. The Manitoulin Oscillation is going to help with time, but it's taking its time getting out here to the cooler phases. I will tell you, Phase 8 is not a cold phase in an El Nino in the month of December, but in January that changes what Phase 8 and Phase 1 mean, and these start getting into colder phases over here when we get into January. There are indications this keeps pushing into these areas as instead of over here on this side where it is now, okay? So it's over here right now. Everything's kind of pushing into here on the colder side. So then the left side is the GFS extended. The right side is the European extended. So they're both generally doing the same thing, different magnitudes, but same general idea. And if we get over these colder phases in January, that will change things around too. Okay, so we just need to be patient with the month of December. We're going to get more snow out of December when we could. It's going to be a thread the needle situation, kind of like what we have coming in overnight tonight. That's a back end snow deal where you have some flakes in the back end type thing. It won't help most of the area outside the interior or northern areas, or areas of elevation, but it's still something. you can have those. And as you go forward in time and you see these temperatures dropping, the average temperatures indicated here by this red line that I showed you, it becomes easier with time. When temperatures are slightly below average, when they are already coming down from what normals are, we head toward the end of the month here, and the average high here is 41. Well, it doesn't take as much, really. You don't have to be like crazy below average in order to get snow. So it becomes easier with time. It's right now it's like pulling teeth. If you have a marginal pattern like we have right now, forget it. But once you get out here in this territory, and then, of course, beyond that into January, as we approach climatological annual minimum temperatures, it becomes a lot easier. You don't need slightly below average temperatures necessarily to produce snow, but it could occur a lot easier here than it does here, and then beyond that, even easier yet. Okay, so it's going to take time, but we'll get there. So milder risks are present at times through the end of December, but it is not a blowtorch, okay? You're going to have some milder days mixed in there, as I showed you, but it's nothing crazy. We're not wearing shorts on Christmas. December may not feature blockbuster snow, but thread-the-needle events are still possible. One of those such events, of course, is coming in overnight tonight into Monday morning. The snowier pattern is still expected to come with time, but patience is going to be needed for a few weeks. This is patience is a virtue. I've been preaching this for a long time. El Niños don't start off with a bang. They just don't. Okay, and it requires patience. I know that's difficult because the last couple of years, if you're a snow lover, have been like forgettable, basically, because you've really had nothing to get excited about. I do think we're gonna have chances for that, especially big storms too. We have that opportunity also, but it's gonna be down the line. Let's just start getting into a more favorable pattern that's gonna transition. Especially in January, where we're gonna have those chances for at least minor stuff that adds up. But it's going to be a little bit until we get rid of this pattern here in December, which is not normally conducive for snowfall or big snowfall in an El Nino in the month of December anyway. So just be patient, give it a couple weeks, and in the meantime, we're not changing our maps for rain or snow projections here on Weather Alerts. So that's going to be the same if you've already seen them or you've seen them here in this video. If you need to see that in further detail, you can go to our Weather Alerts page on the website to see that and all the discussion involved with it too, with impacts and timing. That'll be a very good thing to take a look at as well if you haven't done so already. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, December 10th. Join us again next week. We'll give you an update on that. Hopefully we're not kicking the can down the road even further into the first week of January with the cold if you're a snow lover, but we'll let you know if that is the case or not. But it is definitely coming, and we'll discuss that again next week. Take care.